It's the news story that just won't go away. The way it's being talked about tells us something about the media and the folks on the other side of social issues. This is the Citizenlink Report. I'm Stuart Shepard along with Carrie Gordon-Earl, our senior analyst. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Stuart.
This is a story that you've been hearing on all the cable networks. You're tired of it. We're a little tired of it as well. But it is instructive the way that the media and also some spokespeople have been talking about Representative Anthony Weiner and this situation that he's in. We're not going to deal with what he did or didn't do and all that. What we're going to talk about, which is very insightful, is how people are talking about this through the mainstream media, making statements about this, and what it tells us about the difference between a Christian conservative point of view and a liberal or progressive point of view. First, here's the official line from the representative spokeswoman. He's headed out to seek professional treatment to focus on becoming a better husband and healthier person, adding that he would take a short leave of absence from the House so that he can get evaluated and map out a course of treatment to make himself well. Now, Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, whom we don't hear a whole lot from these days, came out of hiding and issued a statement saying that he has the love of his family, the confidence of his constituents, and the recognition that he needs help. Meanwhile, Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who's also chair of the Democratic National Committee, added, this sordid affair has become an unacceptable distraction. Well, I like the way she started out with sordid affair, but unacceptable distraction from, one has to wonder exactly what they're talking about there. And adding, and for the good of all, he should step aside and address those things that should be most important, his and his family's well-being. Carrie, what can we glean from the use of the word unhealthy to describe this situation? What does that tell us?
Well, I think most certainly it is unhealthy. If you talk to any therapist who deals with issues like sex addiction and these types of issues, they're most certainly going to say it's unhealthy. What's interesting, though, is the words we use communicate our worldview. The scripture says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So we learn a lot about the words people use. So to say that he needs to get healthy, he needs to get help, he does. But what was lacking here to some degree in continuity was an acknowledgement that this was an immoral act, that this was really wrong what this congressman was doing. And while we heard snippets of that, whether it is the leadership in the Democratic Party or the pretty much silent Republican leadership, or it is the commentators on television, we're not getting a consistent stream here of acknowledgement that there was really something fundamentally wrong with what was being said. Sex scandals are nothing new in politics. Both sides of the aisle, whether it is members of Congress or it's governors, we've seen our share. And sometimes people will take responsibility and quickly step down. You do see this run to the treatment center path that has been trod. But when you look at the Gallup poll, the most recent one about morality, asking Americans how they feel about certain issues. Married people who have sex with other people is high on the list of this is an immoral act. More than 90% of Americans see unfaithfulness. Now, how you define that would take us maybe back to other situations like this, but the majority of Americans say this is immoral, that this is wrong for someone to be behaving in a way that is similar to this.
I saw a talking head on one of the cable shows trying to make the point that the reason people are upset is not what he did, but instead it was the hypocrisy in how he dealt with talking about it, which left me thinking, how do you ever get to, how far do you have to be down the road to get to that kind of thinking? The problem isn't what he did. The problem is the hypocrisy. That's from a liberal point of view. It tells us something about how they view the world. They don't see this as immoral necessarily. They won't go so far generally. And we, again, to be fair, we've heard people who've said as much that it's immoral and wrong, but generally speaking, we've not been hearing those words. They don't want to label this as something that should not be done because we don't want to judge other people. Everybody has their own view of truth and morality, and you get to decide for yourself what's okay and if it's okay with you. And once you get into all that kind of thinking, the only thing you can find to criticize is, well, it's a hypocrisy is the problem here.
All of us have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, no doubt about that. But it's in how we take responsibility. And when members of Congress and leaders in our nation use language like healthy and just needs to get help without any kind of moral component to that, it not only shows us their worldview, it informs the next generation. We've got young people who are texting and sexting and doing all sorts of things with this technology. And they're looking at this and saying, well, here's a member of Congress doing this.
Yep.
And there's really no fallout. There's really no screaming.
Nobody wants to say it's wrong.
There's nobody really calling this what it is.
Yeah.
So it is informing the next generation. It is not just being a political moment to say it's a distraction to our party or it's a distraction and it needs to step back from Congress. So they've got to take responsibility here. These are role models. These are people who not only we look up to, but our kids look up to.
Now, one of the folks on the other side of the issues from us is Chris Matthews on MSNBC, which, in case you forget, that NBC in there stands for NBC.
Steny Hoyer, who does speak for the Blue Dog,
Is in NBC Nightly News. They are part of the same organization, but they tend to bring a very hard left view of things, and the reporters from the network tend to drift over to the cable network and back again. All good to know as you hear this. But I was surprised that Chris Matthews was one of the ones who said, we need to say that this is immoral. It's embarrassing behavior. So he used the words that we're talking about, but he was calling on those who are defending a bit, trying to soften the impact of this, to just call it what it is and let's do something about it. But listen to the rest of how he phrased this.
because the people in the rural areas of this country are Christian, conservative, culturally, you can say backward if you want, but they don't like this kind of stuff at all.
So, apart from the backward part, Chris, I generally agree with what he says, but then after I thought about it for a minute, I realized what he's really saying is it's just those backwards Christians who are saying that who are making this, rather, a problem. But if they were enlightened like we are here on the left, we really don't see any problem with this.
Well, Chris Matthews was talking out of both sides of his mouth. He, as you said, he started out in one path and then he diverged to blame the flyover zone in between New York and LA, which is the rest of us.
And it's kind of like, it's immoral, but so what? I mean, it's not a big deal that it's immoral. That's just part of being progressive.
His context was Democrats, you're not going to get the House back with this kind of behavior. So again, I understand it's political pundits, but people can be backwards and they're not going to vote for you because you just did something that was immoral. Yeah, that's probably true with a lot of us. A lot of our constituents, a lot of the values voters most certainly feel that way. So again, to just watch from a little bit of a bird's eye view, to look down and see how this is being managed by the political parties, by the political pundits in the media. It's fascinating to see the words.
There's also a lesson in here for all of us, no matter which side of the aisle we're on, about the era that we live in. I mean, I've got an iPhone here. At any moment, I can post something on Facebook or Twitter. It's viewable around the world that minute. That changes how a regular person like us can actually communicate something to large groups of people, and in this case, a representative of Congress who was communicating what he hoped, I guess, was a private communication, but that went out to large groups of people. What insights can you give us about that observation, that we now have the power to publish from anywhere, at any time, anything?
Well, it really has changed, I think, not only the way we communicate in the world, but how we have to use the technology. Technology, hard technologies like computers, phones, those can be good or bad. The same computer that can be used to do a research project exposing the evil of abortion can be used to access pornography. And so this is just the extension of the same kinds of challenges that we've had in our families. When it's the younger generation using the phones to send suggestive pictures, which has been done, many states have laws about that now. Whether it's Facebook, Twitter, in a social media, whether it's just sending somebody a picture, which was the case here. This technology is great, but with it has got to have responsibility. You've got to understand that it can impact people, and especially our kids and our grandkids have got to understand these technologies will have impacts through the next part of our lives. If they're posting on Facebook, I think we talked about this, you've had a bad day, you're a teenager, you go post something on Facebook, or you're being considered for a job interview and you've got something on your Twitter account. You just really have to take this to heart. And again, it gets back to our discipline, our spiritual sense. I mean, are we behaving in a way that we should be? Because the scripture also says your sin will find you out. One way or another, it will come to the surface and be exposed.
I've been reading about employers who, as part of the application process, will ask for access to your Facebook page so they can just look around in there and see what it's like in there. I want to give you a chance to summarize as we wrap this up. This shows us the great divide between conservative thinking, particularly Christian conservative thinking, and a liberal point of view. How would you summarize what this tells us, that it's not just about being for or against a bill, it's a different way of looking at the world?
Well, it is. If you don't have a moral compass to start with, or you don't have a moral compass, you are comfortable communicating. You are most certainly expressing a lens to the world that is contrary to what God's design would be. And in this regard, again, we don't want to beat up on someone who's down. But on the other hand, if you're in leadership, you need to be assessing and correctly critiquing the situation that's around you. And the message that has come from this, more than anything, has been, yeah, it was wrong, but it needs help and we need to get healthy. So I don't think that's how the majority of Americans are viewing this situation.
All right. Well, thank you, Carrie, for your insights, and thank you for watching. We always appreciate hearing your comments. What do you think about all this? Write to us and let us know at mail@citizenlink.com. We also encourage you to pray for our elected officials, all of them, including Representative Weiner, as he goes through this situation. Help them to have a clear mind and some clarity about this whole situation and about how human beings in relationships get along and how that is from God's point of view. And remember, stand tall and be heard.